Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this quick video, I'm going to discuss a comment that was posted by Asadullah Ali. As you know, I recently made a video, not against him, but more of an advice to see what his position was on Khalifa and Sharia. Does he believe in this? Does he want it to come back? And so forth. He did send me a message clarifying his position that he does believe in Khalifa, he does believe in Sharia and things like this, which I'm grateful. I'm grateful that he could be honest and open and transparent and admit that he believes in a Khalifa system, he believes in Sharia, and he's cited me things from Yaqeen, for example, which I've gone and researched and read into, no problem. However, where the clarity, I think, is still a bit grey, a bit cloudy, is whether, although they may say they believe in a Khalifa system, do they actually believe, and although they say they believe in Sharia and things like this, do they actually believe in the interpretation of Sharia according to conservative orthodoxy Islam? Meaning the overwhelming view throughout history, according to the classical scholars and things like this. Now that's where the grey area is. So for me, there's no point having a khilafah if you're not going to follow the traditional Islamic interpretation and values of Sharia law. And I think that's where the grey area is. Brothers have messaged me regarding Brother Asadullah Ali's view, whether, for example, he doesn't believe in the killing of apostates. This is the messages that are coming through. I don't know whether that is true. I haven't really looked into it. So this is the point that I'm trying to make, that it's not enough to say you believe in Sharia. Do you believe in the orthodoxy, the conservative, the traditional, the historical values of that? And of course, that may differ. That said, Brother Asadullah has posted a video promoting an upcoming debate that's going to take place between Abdullah Al-Andalsi with another atheist. And this is going to be on the topic of, things like human rights and, between Islam and Westernism. As you know, Daniel Hakikato has had a recent debate against Harris Sultan. And this debate went very good, and I think it was fantastic. And traditional Islam won in this debate. However, Brother Asadullah seems to be a little bit annoyed. He seems to be a bit upset that Brother Daniel's debate has got a lot of coverage. It reached a lot of Muslims. But he's sort of complaining that Abdullah Andalsi's debate, his upcoming debate, which is, I think, tomorrow, is not going to receive that much attention. He writes, for example, sadly, this won't receive nearly as many views, as much interest, nor nearly as much praise as pawning some useless trolls online. I think, I'm not too sure whether he's talking about Brother Daniel, but if he is, and I'm pretty sure he's actually talking about that, then my response to him would be this. I think Muslims are sick of hearing taqiyya, brother, like the rejection of killing apostates, the non-punishment of those who insult the Prophet, and even the killings of gays that are endorsed by Islam, and the flogging of fornicators and the stoning of those who commit adultery, and the beating of women in a mild way, like a tapping. I think people are finally over all the taqiyya of pretending that these things do not exist in our text. And this is why most who are honest are appealing to Daniel hakikatu, who comes up with justifiable arguments when comparing that to the deeds of the West. So I think that's why brothers like Abdullah Andalosi and some other brothers like Sami Zatarawi, their crowd are getting pretty much irrelevant now, with all due respect, because of their arguments on reinterpreting the text or reforming a new interpretation of Islam isn't selling well any longer. I think the reformists need to now stand aside and let the conservatives defend the din. And we are now already seeing how difficult it is now for the kuffar to defeat the Muslims in debates. Trust me, I have been involved in dawah probably as long as Brother Asadullah Ali, and I've moved from their arguments, because when we look at the teachings of Islam, it's not exactly what is really in the text. And this is the reason why we have been baited in entering debates where we lose those debates, because we try to wash down the teachings of the din to compromise the din so it fits in line with Western definition of human rights. This is why, for example, their scholars who they appeal to, people like Yasir Qadi, has washed down interpretation of the din. For example, he speaks about the stoning of adultery, claiming that it's bizarre and only just a scare tactic. In other words, it's not applicable for today's time, clearly trying to rule out its application. People, the non-Muslims, are finally seeing, and of course the more conservative, more honest Muslims, are finally seeing that such arguments are not working. And they are now appealing to the likes of Daniel. These are regards to the more honest Muslims. Unfortunately, brothers in dawah like the likes of Abdullah, Yasir Qadi, Asadullah Ali, who live in the West, don't wish to be labelled as either a hate preacher, and Yasir Qadi has actually said that himself. He said he doesn't want to be labelled as a hate preacher. And I think even Mufti Menk also said he doesn't want to be labelled as a hate preacher. Or people identified as being misogynist, or a terrorist, or an ISIS sympathizer. Because soon as you defend some traditional values, then that's what you're going to be labelled as such. And to avoid being labelled these terms, they resort to giving up and turning to a new interpretation of the din, or an interpretation that wasn't very popular among scholars, like a minority view opinion. I believe the more you're leaning to make the West happy, brothers need to now leave these affairs to the brothers who are more in line with traditional Islam. Now remember this hadith. The Prophet said, this is in an authentic hadith, your deen will be seen strange, so give glad tidings to the strangers. I'm only paraphrasing it. In other words, the Prophet is saying the true interpretation of the din religion will remain strange, meaning won't conform with the values of the West or the kuffar. And so he said, give good news to those on this strange din. So if you're pushing a din or an interpretation of the din that isn't strange and more in line with the West or Western human right values, then you are not strange and not on the correct path. So according to that, the Prophet is not giving glad tidings to you. But if you are strange and you're seen as your teachings are very strange and off our human right values and not in line with the West, that is when you are on the more correct path. Because that's what the hadith says. The hadith says, glad tidings to the strangers. And I'm sorry, strange here doesn't mean, you believe in Allah. That's not really that strange because, again, you're believing in the oneness of God, which a lot of other religions believe in too. No, what the Prophet here is talking about is a lot of these teachings, where it comes to the niqab, the hijab, where it comes to things like the punishment of hudud, that, yes, was once part of Christian tradition, but they moved totally away from that. And so the Prophet predicted that in the future, glad tidings for the strangers, those who believe in the niqab, those who believe in the hijab. That's why a lot of the liberals are trying to reinterpret the Quran and say, oh, the hijab is not really in the Quran, it's not really endorsed there. Why? Because it's not according to Western ideology of today, where women open up. Even the beard. Muslims are saying, oh, the beard is not really fard, brother, or wajib, brother. Why? Again, they don't want to wear the beard because it's not really popular amongst the West. Again, they don't want to practice the hudud because, again, it's against the human rights values according to the Western definition. So again, brothers, I can't stress this hadith more. The Prophet clearly made an indication that those who are on the haqq are those who are strangers. And who are the strangers? Those who hold on to conservative Islamic values.